And in light of these strong demands, Daniel's life is on the line. He's about to be executed. He finds out about these demands of Nebuchadnezzar. And he doesn't think, I know how to do this. I know how to crack the code of Nebuchadnezzar's dreams. Instead, he says, I know a God who does. I know a God who reveals all the secret things and gives meaning in this world. So he goes in prayer. He asks his friends, pray for me, and God reveals it to him. And before Daniel runs into the king's court and says, I have it, Eureka, he stops and praises God, who's a revealer of all things, who sets up kings and removes them, and has revealed what is hidden. And it is because of that, then he can go and reveal what is happening. And that is where our passage picks up today. So follow with me here. Yeah, you have the words in the bulletin, a copy of the scriptures with you, or the words on the screen. Daniel chapter 2, verse 24. Therefore Daniel went into Arioch, whom the king had appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went in and said thus to him, do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. Bring me in before the king, and I will show the king the interpretation. Then Arioch brought in Daniel before the king in haste and said thus to him, I have found among the exiles from Judah a man who will make known to the king the interpretation. That the king declared to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, are you able to make known to me the dream that I have seen and its interpretation? Daniel answered the king and said, no. What no wise men, enchanters, magicians, or astrologers can show the king the mystery the king has asked. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. He has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days. Your dream and the visions of your head as you lay in bed are these. To you, O king, as you lay in bed, came thoughts of what would be after this. And he who reveals mysteries made known to you what is to be. But as for me, this mystery has been revealed to me, not because of any wisdom that I have more than all the living, but in order that the interpretation may be known to the king, and that you may know the thoughts of your mind. You saw, O king, behold, a great image. That image, mighty and of exceeding brightness, stood before you, and its appearance was frightening. The head of this image was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its middle and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. As you looked, a stone was cut out by no human hand, and it struck the image on its feet of iron and clay, and broke them in pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold all together were broken pieces, and came like chaff of the summer threshing floors, and the wind carried them away, so not a trace of them could be found. But the stone that struck this image became a great mountain. It filled the whole earth. This was the dream. Now we'll tell the king its interpretation. You, O king, the King of Kings, to whom the God of heaven has given the kingdom, the power, the might, and the glory, and to whose hand he has given, wherever they dwell, the children of man, the beasts of the field, and the birds of the heaven, making you rule over them. You are the head of gold. Another kingdom inferior to you shall rise after you, and yet a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth. And there shall be a fourth kingdom, strong as iron, because iron breaks to pieces and shatters all things. And like iron that crushes, it shall break and crush all these. And as you saw the feet and the toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, it shall be a divided kingdom. But some of the firmness of iron shall be in it, just as you saw iron mixed with the soft clay. And as the toes of that feet were partly iron and partly clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly brittle. As you saw the iron mixed with soft clay, so they will exist another one in marriage, but they will not hold together, just as iron does not mix with clay. In those days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed, nor shall the kingdom be left to another people. It shall break in pieces all these kingdoms and bring them to an end, and it shall stand forever. Just as you saw that a stone was cut from a mountain by no human hand, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, the gold. A great God has made known to the king what shall be after this. The dream is certain, and its interpretation sure. Then King Nebuchadnezzar fell on his face, paid homage to Daniel, and commanded that an offering incense be offered up to him. The king answered and said to Daniel, truly your God is God of gods and Lord of kings and a revealer of mysteries. For you have been able to reveal this mystery. Then the king gave Daniel high honors and many great gifts, and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon and chief prefect over all the wise men of Babylon. Daniel made a request of the king, and he appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon. But Daniel remained in the king's court. This is the word of the Lord. The image of a dream, I can't help but associate a favorite poem of mine by Percy Bysshe Shelley named Ozymandias. I'll read it for you, if you can picture along. I met a traveler from an antique land who said, 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read, which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. And on the pedestal these words appear. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing besides remains. Round the decay of the colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. What is that about? I love the poem, if anything, just from the quotes from it. It's just so epically written, and I think the quote "Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair" is just great for everyday life. You just finished knitting a sweater, hold it up to your friends. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. This is a true story. I texted some of my friends when Lila was born just a picture of her and said, "Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair." It's just such a great, epic thing to say, but the thing about this poem is those words are not meant, they're written kind of ironically. What is the irony of this poem? What's going on is someone is traveling through a desert, likely the desert of Egypt, and he finds these Egyptian ruins. And it says these trunkless legs, it's a statue that has fallen down, and the head of this statue is half buried in sand, and it has this stern face of someone who was once great, Ozymandias, the Greek name of Ramses II of Egypt. Someone who was great and feared and who had stated on the pedestal of his great monument, "Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair." But what are his works now but, as it says, a colossal wreck where there are just empty stands all around? Where's the greatness now? Where are all those amazing works that the mighty despair of as well? Half buried in the sands of time. That's what becomes of all rulers, of all great men and women and kingdoms throughout time. At some point, their words of boasting and greatness become an ironic little wreck. That is in many ways the meaning of this dream, of a similar statue that will also fall into disrepair. That all things fall before the establishment of the kingdom of Jesus Christ. That he lays bare all kings, all kingdoms, all mighty people, bringing their works down like that. All kings will fall in the sand due to the feet mixed with iron and clay. So where are we to do? We still live in kingdoms before kings who will say these very words in the present moment, "Look upon my works, ye mighty, and despair." And what are we to say in response? What are we to do? How are we to live knowing that at one time, in the end, Christ will establish himself over all kings and establish his kingdom over all? The answer is humbleness. Humbly confess God's work, not our own. That humility for all kings to have actually applies to us too, that we need to humbly confess that God is at work, not ourselves. We must humbly confess God's reign over all things. And yet, during all of that, we still are called to humbly work for the good of the city. So we'll look at all those things in humility, confessing God's work, his reign, and working for the good of the city. So let's look there about our duty to humbly confess God's work. We really see that in the beginning of this passage where Daniel does a really gutsy thing, right? His life is on the line. He is also one of the wise men of Babylon whose life is threatened, whose life is on the line, and he's called in. Can anyone do that? Have you been able to do what no one can do? And he says, yeah, no one in the whole kingdom can do this. But he doesn't say, but I cracked the code. But I'm the only one here who can do it. I'm the only one who can figure out. He says, no wise men, enchanters, or astrologers can show the king the mystery that the king has asked. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days. And he goes on and interprets the dream. It's amazing what he just stops to do. Avoids all self-promotion, avoids all temptation to get himself a promotion, even though that's what this results in. He doesn't make what's happening about himself. And the meaning of the dream as well is actually not really about Nebuchadnezzar, even though I think he might actually, Nebuchadnezzar, take away the wrong application of this dream. Daniel avoids the danger, the temptation of self-promotion here, which I think is a pretty big warning for us. How easy is it for us to try to maybe deflect towards God's glory, but still our hearts inside are burning with pride of, yeah, I did do that. I did do a great job with this. How easy it is we just want people to see how good we are. But earnestly, sincerely, Daniel is able to say, this is just God who's revealing the mystery, and he is just speaking through me in this. What is God revealing here? What is God at work to do here? Well, first of all, reminding us what this passage is not. What many parts of Daniel we should be reminded are not like some sort of Bible code that then we need to pick up and try to like crack what's going to happen next so that we can see our work and our interpretation as something that we should lord over other people. And I say that because this passage here isn't really, we can tell Nebuchadnezzar doesn't really even care about what the meaning of this dream is. Just the fact that a meaning has been told, he's happy. I think the main message here is just the fact that God reveals things. Now, if you're kind of disappointed by that and you're wondering what are these kingdoms, don't worry. There's kind of a parallel passage to chapter 2 in chapter 7 of Daniel that kind of starts naming what some of these kingdoms will be. So we will get to that in a few months. But God is most concerned with us seeing, I'm the one who reveals things. I know what the plan is, and I choose to reveal when I reveal. And if I reveal through people, they should give glory to my work that is being done. How quickly, though, we want to start putting little plaques on our pedestals, though. When we reach an achievement, maybe it is a promotion, maybe it is a great point of success, an achievement, we want to be able to stand on a pedestal and scribble at the bottom of, these are my works. Despair at my works, ye mighty. But how can we do that? Standing at the foot of the cross. What pedestal can we stand at? What can we scribble at our glory when we stand before Jesus who died on the cross, knowing that our legacy is one of sin. And that is what Christ has taken on and been raised above all. Our own glories and our own achievements will be buried in the sands of time themselves. What our eyes should cast towards is what God's work is. And God's work in your life points us to our own failures, our pride, crucified in Christ. If you're trying to find what is my meaning, what is my achievement for this world, look to Christ. Put your faith in him, knowing that the legacy of your failures are crucified there. And in the cross, you have a meaning of what you are here to do. And if you have put your faith in Christ, look there again. Do not take your eyes down. We are called in that way. The only pedestal, the only plaque that matters to us is not what stands below our feet, but the one that was put above the head of Christ, Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. That is the plaque and the pedestal that matters most, that has the most influence in all of history. And so our calling then is to humbly confess that God is at work. whether people listen to it or not. You know, I find it interesting. You see this a lot, even recently, when the Washington not football team anymore, Commanders, won their wild card game a few weeks ago. You see this a lot in Jaden Daniels, their quarterback, who's a rookie and is he's poised to maybe set some historic records for rookie quarterbacks. This young man. Many of you who are older than, that's going to make you feel old, right? Is doing such amazing things. And after this wild card game, he's probably done it at many of his other games. The sideline reporter was asking him, how do you stay so calm, so poised? He's got the world on his shoulders. It seems he's not registering any of it. And he answers, just trust in the Lord, man. There's nothing I should worry about. Put all my worries on him. He'll take care of the rest. I love that humility. He immediately deflects to God. And the impact that has on the reporter, she just responds, and let's go to the other side of the ball and talk about defense. In our efforts to humbly confess God's work, yeah, it might have that result. Okay, well, let's talk about defense now. Oh, okay. And that's kind of, in some ways, what happens with Nebuchadnezzar too. Yeah, he praises God back, but is this just a polytheist adding one more god to the pantheon, perhaps? That doesn't deter Jaden Daniels in that case. It shouldn't deter us to continually think, how can we confess God being at work in our life? It's too easy for us to take that glory. We shouldn't. Instead, let us also confess that God is reigning, that God has a plan, because he is the only one that sustains the world. In the cross of Christ, not only do we see our pride crucified, we see a reigning king who would come to die, and yet then, as we saw in our assurance of pardon today, is exalted above every name. What we see in this dream, similar to that Shelley poem, is a dream of future kingdoms that will have an end. It's a vision of the future that is actually, when you look at it, kind of bleak. Some commentators don't read too much into this. I'm kind of convicted that the material and the progression, or rather regression of materials, is significant. He goes to Nebuchadnezzar and say, you are the head of gold. And he's like, all right. And after you will come a kingdom of silver, and then of bronze, and of iron mixed with clay. You're getting worse and worse materials in this. And maybe that's why Nebuchadnezzar is so excited. He's like, yeah, no one will ever be as great as me, the gold head of all kingdoms. He's missing the point here. But what I think the point for us is that for all the progress we do see in history, and we do see progress, we do see things going well, just human institutions and human rulers and powers are not getting better. I mean, just even look at, surveys of American faith in American institutions like the presidency. I mean, like right after Watergate in the 70s and the Vietnam War, you just see like a confidence in the presidency just like bottom out more and more each year. You don't see it getting better. The more and more we see human rulers in place, the more reason we have to distrust them. We see and more, this is just iron with clay. There's some strength in there. There's some power. But can we really stand all of our hopes? Can all that soft, brittle clay hold our hopes, our dreams, our identity in? No. In the end, all kingdoms will come crashing down, but crashing down under the rock of Christ. This is the rock of Christ that we see here, humbling all rulers, bringing all kingdoms low. It's what we see in verse 44. In the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed, nor shall the kingdom be left to another people. It shall break in pieces all those kingdoms and bring them to an end, and it shall stand forever. Just as you saw that a stone was cut from a mountain by no human hand, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold. A great God has made known to the king what shall be after this. The dream is certain, interpretation sure. I think on this side of the cross we can see what kingdom shall have no other end, but what is talked about in Isaiah, of that prince whose kingdom shall have no end, and the government shall be on his shoulders, who is Jesus Christ, this rock coming down like an asteroid to lay everything bare and low, is Christ. coming to earth from heaven to bring low all those fragile empires, bring down low all those false idols that we put up and want to scratch our achievements, names on a pedestal, the idol of your own image. Maybe the idol of someone else you admire, a ruler you want to put your faith in. Your idol of all of my hopes and my control in life can be etched into, if I can just get here, if these changes can just happen. Christ comes down and lays all that bare. It becomes a mountain, a rock that is sturdy, that is not iron mixed with clay, but is worth putting our hope into. A quote from a commentator, former professor of mine too, pastor, Ian Duguid said, and I really liked this, don't polish the statue, but look for the rock. Don't polish the statue, but look for the rock. There's a temptation. I think what Nebuchadnezzar is doing here, again, I'm a rock, I'm a head of gold, right? He's thinking so much about the statue. He doesn't really care about this rock. Well, that'll come after me. Let us not spend too much time polishing the statue, the rulers of today, our rule, our life, and saying that this is the end all, be all of all things. But look for that rock that lays all things low. I came across this story, and it just thought it was really powerful. I'll quote from here. The Roman and Christian-hating Emperor Julian was mortally wounded in a war with Persians. While Julian's expedition was in progress, one of Julian's followers asked a Christian in Antioch what the carpenter's son was doing, what Jesus, the carpenter's son, was doing. The Christian replied, "The maker of the world, whom you call the carpenter's son, is employed in making a coffin for the emperor." Within days, news came to Antioch of Julian's death. This is where Daniel 2 leaves us, that all emperors and rulers have a coffin prepared for them by the carpenter's son, Jesus Christ. That all rulers, every empire, every kingdom, the only true security in this world is in the carpenter's son. That's where our faith needs to be, where our eyes need to look, is that rock coming to establish his rule. But does that mean then, if we don't polish the statue but look for the rock, that we just actually try to help tear down the statue? Ironically, no, because that's not what Daniel's doing here either. He's not like, now, my brothers, let's create a Jewish rebellion and take down this statue. No. He stays, the last words of this passage, but Daniel remained at the king's court. He knows what's going to happen, gives glory to God, gives credit to what God is at work doing, and he stays in this court that is going to be crushed in days. And we're going to see in Daniel how many administrations that are changed over that he sticks in with. What he's doing is he's working for the good of the city while he's there. And that is a powerful thing for us as we think about what it means to be, faithful exiles right now. Work for the good of the city. I mean, the good of the city that we see is the king answering to Daniel, your God is a God of gods and Lord of kings, revealer of mysteries, for you have been able to reveal this mystery. Now, what we can make of Nebuchadnezzar's faith right now is, we can't infer too much. But the very fact that this pagan king is proclaiming the power and might of this God is a good thing. Is he a changed man? Well, we'll see in the next few chapters how much this man needs to be humbled and is directly by God. But Daniel's faithfulness here, in being faithful so that this pagan king glorifies Yahweh, fulfills the words of the prophet Jeremiah. Jeremiah, who is telling God's people in Judah, this is coming. What Daniel goes through here, they were warned about. But what they were told when this happens, in Daniel 29, was, thus says the Lord, the God of hosts, the God of Israel, to all the exiles in whom I have sent into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon. Build houses and live in them. Plant gardens, eat their produce. Take wives and have sons and daughters. Take wives for your sons and give your daughters in marriage, that they may bear sons and daughters. Multiply there and do not decrease. But seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile. Pray to the Lord on its behalf, for in its welfare you will find your welfare, and you will find your welfare. Let me just read that last part again there. Seek the welfare of the city where I've sent you into exile. Pray to the Lord on its behalf, for in its welfare you will find your welfare. Yes, the city in which we live, whether it's made of bronze, silver, gold, iron, and clay, hard to say. No matter the material, it will be brought low by the work of Christ. But while God has us here, pray for its welfare. Pray for its good. Pray that God would have its work. And in your job, at Epic, work for the welfare of the company. Why? Because God has put you there, that he may be glorified. Do it not because you want the mission and purpose of your job to succeed and be great, but because you want the glory of God to be shown there. That's why we do our job well, because there is a God. Martin Luther said, I've maybe heard me quote this before, but this is so helpful for us in our theology of work. The Christian shoemaker does his duty, not by putting little crosses on the shoe, but by making good shoes, because God is interested in good craftsmanship. Again, I say that not because God's a sneakerhead, but God loves good work. Daniel does good work in the kingdom of Babylon because God cares about good government work, even as he is in the process of destroying it. God cares about good medical software, guys. God likes it. When my chart works well and I can log on and see my blood test, God's like, way to go. But it's not about, making your team lead happy, your boss happy. If they're happy, great. But that's not the end, the purpose of what we're here to do. While we're here, waiting for that rock of Christ to fully be established, pray for the welfare of those around us, for the health, for the safety, for the thriving of lives here. Work for that. That is what God has put us here to do, not just for good in itself, but the name of God may be glorified, that people may know, praise be to God who is Lord of kings. Because we know the ending. It's the kingdom of Jesus being established. Every 4 years now, not 8 years anymore, we seem to have a transition of power from one party to another, and we just had that this past Monday with the inauguration of President Trump. And within our church, we have different reactions to what that establishment of a new administration means, right? If his inauguration and his first actions of president pulls you towards fear, anxiety, what you are to do is pray for him. Pray for the welfare of America. Pray for the president, for our senators, for our governors, for representatives, for judges. Pray for their welfare, knowing that in time, just like all other kingdoms, they'll be toppled in the sand too at the coming of the rock of Christ. And if the inauguration of Trump and his administration maybe pulls you towards an unhealthy worshipful obsession, remember again, in time, it will be toppled in sand. Have the right perspective. All the while, pray for the good of the city. Pray for the good of the country. Pray for our rulers. As Daniel could have said, hey, Nebuchadnezzar, you're just going to die someday and be humbled in your face. Daniel probably would have been carted off and killed then. But he stays in the court to serve the king well and continue to call him to knowledge of who Yahweh is. That is our duty, whether that's in our prayer for the nation, our life and our work. Work for the good of the city until that rock comes. And until that, while we do that, what that might look like. Again, I think one of the core verses here in our passage, Daniel 2:27, when he says, or as he says, there's no enchanters who can do this, but then verse 28, where he says, but there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. My question for you is, how can you work? How can you live and pray and be in life with your neighbors around you that proclaims there is a God? There is a God in heaven. That's why I do what I do. That's why I care about working well. That's why I care about praying for the nation. Why I care for the good of my neighbor. Because I believe there is a God in heaven who's revealed these things. A God in heaven who's at work. A God in heaven who's good. A God in heaven who reigns. Live your life in a way that just proclaims that. Even if it's brushed aside like you see for Daniel or Mr. Daniels in Washington, right? Doesn't matter if it's brushed aside. Live in a way that faithfully proclaims that. Even if it's a short, small sentence, it is a tremendously powerful and political statement itself. Always remember the words of my graduation baccalaureate. Pastor Alistair Begg came and spoke. And he said a really important thing to a group of graduating seniors. He said to the graduating class of 2015, the greatest of you in this room will barely make it to be a footnote on the pages of history. How's that for some reality checks, right? The greatest of you will barely make it to the pages of as a footnote to the pages of history. Just like the great Ozymandias, whose head is half buried in the sand, every one of us, all of our achievements will one day pass out of memory, covered in the sands of time. So instead, look to the one who at last has said it all. Do not seek to establish the works of today as the things that the mighty may despair of, but instead, look around to what Jesus is at work doing. Look to the work of Jesus, of lives changed, of people coming to faith, of the welfare of others promoted because there is a God in heaven. Look to the works of Jesus, ye mighty, and rejoice. That is our calling here today. Let us take some time and pray and reflect on that.